The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations, is over.
Canada is currently embarking on a substantial strategic overhaul of its steel industry, a move necessitated by the persistent and significant impact of tariffs levied by the United States. Welcome viewers to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. Prime Minister Mark Carney has been at the forefront of this announcement, signaling a profound policy shift designed to both lessen Canada's economic dependence on the U.S. for trade in steel products and, crucially, to aggressively promote the increased domestic utilization of Canadian-produced steel. This multifaceted approach aims to cultivate a steel sector that is not only more resilient to external pressures, but also more fundamentally integrated into the nation's economic fabric, responding to prolonged and punitive U.S. tariffs. The catalyst for these sweeping policy adjustments is the ongoing imposition of increasingly stringent tariffs by the U.S. under President Donald Trump. These measures began with a 25% levy on Canadian steel in March, which was then drastically escalated to a 50% tariff in June. Prime Minister Carney has openly acknowledged a significant concern that these U.S. tariffs may very well remain in place for an extended period, even in the event of a new bilateral trade agreement being successfully negotiated between the two nations. This sustained uncertainty surrounding market access to Canada's largest historical trading partner underscores the urgent imperative for Canada to develop a more self-reliant and internally focused strategy for its steel industry, moving beyond a sole reliance on the fluctuating outcomes of international trade talks. The instability created by these tariffs has severely disrupted established supply chains and forced Canadian manufacturers to seek alternative solutions in markets, confronting an unsustainable trade imbalance and dependency. During a recent public address, Prime Minister Carney meticulously outlined a critical and increasingly untenable imbalance within Canada's steel market. He highlighted that a staggering proportion of Canada's steel consumption, nearly two-thirds, is presently satisfied by imports from foreign sources. Concurrently, an overwhelming majority, exceeding 90%, of Canada's own domestically produced steel exports have historically been directed almost exclusively to the United States. Carney unequivocally characterized this profound level of dependence on a single export market as unsustainable, thereby emphasizing the immediate and decisive need for a fundamental rebalancing of the entire steel industry. This concentrated reliance on the U.S., particularly given its recent protectionist trade posture, represents a significant economic vulnerability that the newly enacted policies are meticulously designed to mitigate. The long-term objective is to foster a much stronger and more consistent domestic demand for Canadian steel, thereby reducing the industry's susceptibility to the whims of external market forces and trade disputes. Implementing rigorous new import restrictions and tariffs to actively counteract this import dependency and protect its domestic producers, the Canadian government is introducing a series of stringent new measures, primarily centered around a significant tightening of its tariff rate quotas, TRQs. Specifically, for all countries that do not currently possess a free trade agreement with Canada, tariff-free steel imports will be sharply restricted to just 50% of their 2024 import volumes. This represents a substantial reduction from the previous 100% allowance. Any volume of steel imported from these non-FTA countries that surpasses this newly established, more restrictive threshold will be subjected to a hefty 50% tariff, effectively creating a strong disincentive for excessive or unfairly priced foreign steel. Furthermore, in a distinctly targeted action, Prime Minister Carney explicitly singled out China in his recent announcement. He declared that an additional 25% tariff would be applied to steel imports from all non-U.S. countries if the steel contained within those imports could be demonstrated to have been melted and poured in China. This specific measure is strategically aimed at preventing the circumvention of existing tariffs and safeguarding Canadian domestic producers from the adverse effects of potentially subsidized or unfairly priced steel originating from China. Carney also meticulously clarified that existing product exemptions under the Canada-US-Mexico Agreement, CUSMA, will remain entirely unaffected by these new import restrictions, thereby ensuring that the crucial trilateral trade relationship with its North American partners is not inadvertently disrupted. These robust import controls are a clear signal of Canada's commitment to defending its industrial base, a resolute commitment to prioritizing Canadian steel for national projects. Beyond the realm of tightened import restrictions, the Canadian government is demonstrating a profound and unwavering commitment to significantly increase the domestic utilization of Canadian-produced steel. Prime Minister Carney has publicly pledged a fundamental revision to federal government procurement policy, which will now explicitly mandate that contractors undertaking any government-funded projects utilize Canadian steel wherever feasible. This expansive mandate is set to extend to some of the nation's most ambitious and critically important infrastructure initiatives. This includes Canada's aggressive and much-needed push to construct more housing units across the country, aiming to address a pervasive national housing shortage. It also encompasses strengthening the nation's defense sector through robust and patriotic procurement policies. By embedding this by Canadian steel requirement firmly into federal contracts, the government aims to generate a consistent, substantial, and reliable demand for domestically manufactured steel, thereby directly supporting Canadian jobs, fostering industrial growth, and stimulating innovation within the sector. This move is anticipated to create a stable foundational market for Canadian steel producers, allowing them to invest and expand with greater confidence. These comprehensive and strategically interconnected changes, as articulated with conviction by Prime Minister Carney, are fundamentally engineered to empower the Canadian economy and its workforce. The explicit aim is to ensure that Canadians are giving ourselves far more than any foreign government can take away. This powerful statement underscores a deliberate strategic vision of cultivating greater national self-sufficiency and enhancing economic resilience, particularly in the face of ongoing and unpredictable external trade challenges. The long-term objective is to forge a steel industry that is considerably less susceptible to international market volatility and political pressures, and instead, one that is more deeply and intrinsically integrated into the fabric of Canada's sustained economic development and national security. This proactive stance reflects a determination to build a stronger domestic economy from the inside out. Industry response, challenges, support, and a glimmer of optimism. Canada's vital steel and aluminum sectors have, regrettably, been among the most severely impacted by the sector-specific tariffs imposed by the United States, experiencing considerable setbacks and disruptions. Catherine Cobden, the influential president and CEO of the Canadian Steel Producers Association, provided stark and telling statistics to CBC News, revealing a distressing 30% fall in Canadian steel production since the initial U.S. metal tariff was implemented in March. This figure vividly illustrates the significant strain that the industry has been under. Despite these profound hardships, Cobden expressed strong and unequivocal support for the government's recent announcements. She candidly remarked, "This is something we should have been doing all along, but it's fantastic to see that we are making progress." Her statement encapsulates a widespread sentiment within the industry that these proactive and defensive measures are not merely necessary for immediate survival.